Hi, I'm Bill Sanders, and this is the second part of the discussion of visibility in object-oriented programming with PHP. A lot of the visibility has to do with inherited materials. For example, if you have a protected class and you extend it with a child class, that child class will be able to use all of the protected elements within the parent class. So we're going to look at that too.
We interrupt this program to tell you there is no such thing as a protected class. There are protected properties and there are protected methods. Sorry for the error. Now back to our regularly scheduled program.
And another thing, it's a very interesting feature, not only of PHP, but virtually every language. And this has to do with the constructor function. When you actually write in a constructor function and you put underscore underscore construct, you have a constructor function. But if you don't put one of those in, you still get one. It doesn't do anything, but it allows you to create an instance of that class. And so when you create an instance of the class, this what we'll call an invisible constructor function goes to work for you. But it's not going to fire off anything because there's nothing there to fire. First thing we're going to take a look at is a very simple class. This class is called AutoCon function. And what it shows is that you can have an automatic constructor function. This is important because what is ever in a constructor function you create using the underscore underscore construct will fire as soon as the class is called. If you don't have one, you can still instantiate it, but nothing's going to happen. So here we have an instance with a property, a public one, called test. And we've assigned it a string testing with the h1 tags to make it a little bigger. Okay, so that's very simple kind of thing. And public means it's available to some other class requesting it. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take a look at what is required to request that particular property. And it's pretty simple. All we have to do is to go to the client class, and the first thing we have to do, we have to include the name of the PHP file that the class is in that we want to request. It was called AutoCon function. That was the name of the class, and when I name my classes the same name as the file, so it makes life a lot simpler. And so it's called autoconfunction.php. Okay, so what I do, first of all, I declare a class, AutoCon client. This is the client making a request. Then I have my constructor function. Now notice I laid out the constructor function, declared it as public, even though you don't have to. It's automatically public whether you declare it such or not. And then I have a variable. This is a local variable called tester, and it instantiates a new AutoCon function. Okay, and then the next thing it says echo tester dash arrow test. Okay, now test is the name of the public property that was part of the AutoCon function. In fact, it was the only thing that was there. There wasn't even a constructor function that was created. And so you can request it with this. I mean, you can create a new instance and nothing's going to happen. However, here, since it is a property and it's a public property, we can access it this way. Okay, so let's take a look and see what happens when we request that public property. Okay, and sure enough it comes out testing. This was from here, public test equal testing, and sure enough when we ran it, that was exactly what we got. We got the testing. There was no created constructor function, but one was automatically made so that we can create an instance of that variable. The next thing I'm going to take a look at, let's take a look at the protected class. Here's a class called ProtectView, and it has two different protected properties. One's called pet, the other one's called rat. And they're assigned values, dog, and the other one is no lab for you, Mickey.
And what it does, it returns the value, this pet. Okay? Now, it returns it with the function getDog, and the function is also protected. So you have three protected elements here. You have two protected properties and a protected method. Okay, so what it's going to do, it's going to return this pet. Now this pet we know is dog, and it's referring to this one because when you have a protected or private or even public declared property within a class, you use this statement. Now let's go back and take a look at the child class that we have. Now the child class extends the protect view. So we have protect child and it extends the protect view. Also notice too that we have to include once a protect view.php file. Okay, so here again we have a public constructor function. And now this time we simply output echo this get dog. Well, there's nothing about this get dog here, but remember it was a protected function of your protect view. Here it is right here, get dog, it's protected, but since the protected child extends protect view, it can use protected methods. Well, what about protected properties too? Well, we have another protected property in the protect view, and it's called rat. No lab for you, Mickey. And we go back to the protect child class. Now, notice this is not a client. This is not calling another class, but rather it's considered a child class because it extends a superclass or a parent class in this case. Let's give it a run and see what happens. And there's dog. It says this get dog, and there's our dog. And then we wanted to return this, and we get no lab for you, Mickey. Finally, we have the private, and we'll start with the class that has the private properties. And this one has two private properties. First of all, one is called life, and we have it equal to Howard Hughes. And then we have another one that's, we declare it, but we don't assign it a value called life love. And then we have a public function here, construct, we made a constructor function. Here we have a local variable called Harold. And Harold is an instance of this guest pass. And guest pass is it's a private method that's used. And it is addressing a private property called lifelove. And so we have this lifelove equal loves the fly. Howard Hughes loved to fly, by the way. And then we return this life dot this lifelove. Okay, we've concatenated a couple things here, and we're returning them together as a single unit, and so we put parentheses around it. Okay, so here, what we're doing when we have Harold, the local variable, equal this guest pass, it basically calls, and then it echoes it out. Now this whole thing begins with a request from a client. Here's our client, and it's called private client, and again we include private view.php. That's the name of this is the name of the class, and with the .php on it, that's the name of the file. Like I said, you could name it anything you want to, but this makes it a little easier to keep track of everything. Okay, so we have a public function, we have a constructor function, then we have something called privy. Again, this is a local variable, and we have new private view. Private view is calling up this private view, and when we instantiate it, it does all of this with the private function or the private method, and also with the private variables, and so are the private properties. So the way that we can get to private properties and private methods of another class is through what we'll call a public window. There's got to be some place to get them, so we can access them, but we have to do it in very special ways. And what this does, it helps to keep the class encapsulated.